We're going to get a great look into the latest and greatest developments in research. And to lead us, I'm pleased to announce Don Gloeckler. Don is the new Executive Vice President and Chief Research Officer of the ARF. He joined the ARF after a 33-year career at Procter & Gamble in January of this year. He has held research management positions for P&G in the US, Canada, and Japan, so he brings a great global perspective. He's been co-chair of the ARF Research Quality Forum and a member of the True Sample Quality Council. A former member of the Board of Directors of the Media Ratings Council, the Board of Directors and Steering Committee of the Nielsen Media Research Council for Research Excellence, and the Advisory Board for Nielsen Connect. As I said, he is an all-star, and in fact, in 2006, he was recognized by Ad Age as one of the magazine's media mavens. Born and raised in Ohio and a current resident of Ohio, he has an MBA from Ohio State, which, as a Michigan grad myself, I can say I'm pleased to see it didn't hold you back. I am pleased to welcome Don Gloeckler. Thanks, Ralph.
Well done. How can you criticize a great line like that? That was awesome. I'm glad to be here, mainly because I've got to figure out where to put my business card to win that door prize that's parked just on the other side of the wall. That's pretty cool. I was also glad to not hear groans when Jim said that we were moving from creative to research. And it's good that we didn't, because frankly, I think we've got an all-star cast of people who are really into research, as I am, and I think it's a critical opportunity for digital place-based advertising. So hopefully you will agree with us that that's an important point once you hear our speakers speak. Before I introduce them, I want to let you know that each of them will have 5 to 7 minutes to present a few thoughts about their particular area of expertise. Then we'll go to question and answer. And the way the question and answers will work is there will be microphones, but we'll also ask you if you'd prefer to ask a question on a card, because from my experience, that often is more comfortable for many people. We'll collect those, and then we'll have all the questions brought up to me at the end. And we'll either do microphone or card questions as need be. And of course, I've come equipped with a few of my own questions as necessary. So let me introduce our panel. Beginning, our first speaker will be David Shiffman. David is the Senior Vice President and Director of Research at MediaVest. David, if you'll join me on stage. Henry Laura is the Executive Director of Sales at the Media Behavior Institute. Leslie Wood is the Chief Research Officer at Nielsen Catalina Solutions. And Dr. Carl Marci is the CEO and Chief Science Officer at Interscope Research. So without further ado, I'll ask David to lead off in the #1 spot. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. And good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me here. We were asked to give a few minutes sort of background on some things, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple and sort of offer up an agency perspective on this area of the business and from a research perspective. And I think the big theme is really going from what was largely intuition and it felt right to a much more data-driven sort of world. And obviously, that is the world that we're increasingly living in and making decisions based on data as opposed to gut. That doesn't mean art goes away. In fact, it, I think, helps inform our creativity, but really being able to move to a different world. So, ultimately, planning and evaluation of digital place-based media has really evolved a lot over the last few years. And I think, if we really think back to where we were, there were pretty simple questions that we asked. The first one was, is it contextually relevant? So if we're going to be in a certain place, like a doctor's office, and be around health environments, does it make sense for the brand, given what the brand is and what the brand wants to do? That was pretty simple. And there wasn't a whole lot of quantification of things, and it was very simple conversation. And did it make sense? And we can take a little bit of money and throw it there because it feels right. And then sort of the other side of the question was, hey, are we going to get a little bit of research around this? Not necessarily robust, not necessarily meaningful, but are we going to get something back at the end that we can look at and say, We measured something, we're not quite sure what, but we got something back in return. I think where we've moved to now are deeper, more meaningful questions, and I think we can have a lot more educated conversation about what the role of this channel is and can be. And part of that is thinking about things like reach. How many people are we going to reach? And how often are we going to get them? Starting to think more about the audience profile and really understand and compare across platforms. Who are these people, and what do they look like, and where are they, and what are all those component pieces that we want to know? And then there's still that element of contextual relevance. That doesn't go away, and in fact, it plays to the strength of this medium in a big way. And then we start to think about mindset and the opportunities there from a consumer perspective. How do they engage? How do they interact? What are the ways in which we can be relevant and give them those brand experiences that we're trying to give to them and deliver to them? And then, the other element is really a lot more rigor and a lot more thinking and thought around measurement. How are we going to prove that this works? How are we going to actually be able to look at what we did and say, yes, we didn't just get a measure, but we actually got something that we feel good about because we now know that this works and how it works in comparison to other elements of the marketing mix. And that fundamentally changes how we think about things. Probably no shocker, data is sort of at the forefront of this change. And again, I think we're still talking about a world of art and science, but when we've got data, it changes how we can have the conversation and lets us think a little bit differently. The first element is we've absolutely moved to better audience measurement. We look at Nielsen and what's available in MRI and Scarborough and other sources. We can actually quantify the number of people. Sounds pretty simple, but it's pretty important, and it really does lend itself to greater consideration of the channel. I think another element is sort of in that middle, is that human understanding. So we're not just talking about how many eyeballs and reach conversations, but actually being able to think about how much time do people spend? What's that environment? What's that mindset? Things like USA Touchpoints, which I know Henry's going to come up and talk a little bit about. But where did they come from? Where are they? And what are they thinking about? And who were they with? And all those kind of things that help us understand what that context is in terms of where we can connect with people. And then the third element, performance metrics. And again, lots of different ways that can be done, and lots of different ways that we're doing that now. There's things like Innerscope. There's companies like Marketing Evolution that can measure these kind of elements across and compare it across different platforms. Or things like market mix modeling, where we can actually get the data inputs to start to understand what the true ROI is of the business. So what it allows us to do when we think about it from an agency research perspective, agency planning perspective, and activation perspective, all the way through to measurement, we can have better, smarter conversations. What it also allows us to do is think differently and have different types of conversations for different brands and different companies, depending on what they're looking for. So you can think about reach and this medium as a reach-based opportunity. You can also think about it as a contextual relevance opportunity. And we can think about it as those things all come together. So it really does, data makes us smarter, changes the conversation, and lets us feel more comfortable and confident about where we are and how we think about the opportunity. I think the reality is when we think about where we need to go, some great strides have been made, no question about that. But the question is, and I think the challenge is, how do we continue to drive progress? How do we continue to drive growth and keep pace? Because everything else around us is becoming more data-centric. Everything else around us is becoming better measured, and we're getting more sophisticated around that. So how do we keep pace? So we can't just say, hey, we went from over here to over here, aren't we great? How are we going to move forward? And I think, to me, there's sort of three key areas. The first is in sort of audience measurement and metrics, and thinking about more standardization and more consistency across the board. I think we've made a lot of progress there, but how do we continue to build that so that we can look at things as apples to apples and not, this is an apple, this is an orange, and this is a lemon, and I'm not sure how it all compares. I think the other thing, and one of the big things going on in all areas that I'm involved in, is the whole sort of targeting question. How can we get more precise and more information about the kind of people that we want, well beyond demographics? Right? We're moving quickly to a world where it's not just about adults 18 to 49, or people with certain attitudes, but really looking at purchase-based and transactional-based data, and how can we sort of leverage that, and how can we think more about addressability. We want to be able to go after our high-value customers. Can we do it? Can we build the systems and the data to get us there faster? And then I think the third element, when we think about measurement, is integration across different areas, because more and more the conversation is about trade-offs. We're talking about fixed budgets. We're not talking about there's this lump of $100 million sitting there that all of a sudden appeared as incremental money. It's being able to look at what those trade-offs are across channels and thinking about how can we build the right sort of integrated measurement systems that get us there. And that applies to audience measurement, to how can we think about incremental reach and finding new people that we can't get in TV, in digital areas, and other places, but also from a performance measurement perspective. How do we make sure that we've got the best quality data fitting into the best kinds of measurement so that we can truly compare the pieces and continue to prove out the value and ultimately the success of the campaigns and the programs we run in this space, so that we don't have one-off pieces of research that tell us some great stuff, but that we can't bring back and compare and look at it across all the channels that we were activating in, across all the budget that was spent. And that is what I wanted to share with you. And now,
And next we will introduce Henry Lara from the Media Behavior Institute.
Thank you very much, Don. And thank you, everyone here, for inviting me to attend. There we are. So I think it's actually really appropriate that we've been invited to talk about context and how much it matters, because the unique database that we have, USA Touchpoints, really does put the consumer in context. We're not just measuring, as David just noted, it's no longer just age and sex and what media they're using. It's looking at the consumer and building a profile of that consumer in context with their daily lives, all the activity that they're engaged in, who they're engaged in that activity with, where they are, and how best to reach them. So we've created a rich, multidimensional view of the consumer. Rich data enables us to yield insight for our clients, and the insight fuels relevance, and the relevance drives performance. And as Alan noted earlier, it's about storytelling. And what USA Touchpoints delivers to our clients is the ability to generate stories. It's really about storytelling stimuli, and each nugget that we deliver helps engage that consumer. So the promise is not unlike the promise that the members of the DPAA make. It's harder working media dollars, being able to reach the consumers in the right mood, with the right people, doing the right things in the right place. Again, all about storytelling. And we're starting with a very simple and powerful app. This is our electronic diary. We're using smartphones with a very easy-to-use app, and those people that are very familiar with smartphones have no problem going through the app. If they don't have a smartphone, we're actually giving them one that is dumbed down and can only communicate with us. But we take them through with a very detailed process on how to maintain the diary for us. And they're keeping it for us, believe it or not, over a 10-day period, reporting on a half-hour by half-hour basis their location from the time they wake up in the morning until the time they go to sleep in the evening, what activities they're doing, who they're doing them with in social settings. So are they alone, or are they with a partner or a spouse, with their kids, with their pets? With respect to media, we do a really deep dive. We're looking at 8 different media categories and taking it really down to individual levels so that media planners and ultimately media buyers have a real understanding of that medium in context with the respondents' daily lives. And then most important, mood and emotion. Mood on a good mood, bad mood on a 5-point scale, relaxed and alert on a 5-point scale, and then 17 different levels of emotion. So all of that information is nested within GfK MRI's Survey of the American Consumer. We are literally a recontact of people who have already maintained the GfK MRI diary, the survey of the American consumer. We recontact them and then hit them with, after having filled out a 100-plus page product diary for MRI, we hit them with a 10-day electronic diary. And bless them, they all do it. And so we've got a national probability sample of 2,000 adults, 18 to 64, all performance checked by our field force, and then ascribed back up to the MRI respondents, 21,000 on a regular basis. So we've got 2,000 people, 20,000 days, almost 500,000 hours of American life. And it's truly a 360-degree view of the consumer. And they're reporting on 20 different location types, 23 activities, 8 media categories, 10 social settings, including pets. We're not asking about the media behavior of the pets, but they do come into play quite regularly. And then again, I said 17 emotional mindsets. And here's the pleasure-pain principle for the USA Touchpoints. The continuum of emotional states that we're reporting, from loving and happy, interested, contented, to indifferent and bored, all the way back down to sad and angry. And the respondents are reporting each of these throughout their day. So let's just look at some data really quickly. In this case, we're looking at location on a half-hour by half-hour basis for restaurants and health clubs. In this case, one of our agency clients was being pitched for by a digital place-based provider with screens in restaurants and health clubs. And their target was tech-forward individuals, as defined by MRI. So we went through our respondents, found the tech-forwards, and compared them with tech-averse. And you can see where you can reach the tech-forwards by time of day in gyms and health clubs and restaurants. And the tech-forwards are much more active, much more engaged. Sure, tech-averse respondents will go to gyms and go to health clubs, but the tech-forwards are much more active, and they're doing everything at a higher level. Another example looks at the early afternoon paths to purchase. And in this case, we're looking at female shoppers, what's happening in the 1-hour period before she hits the store or starts shopping. And we're looking here at locations and some media types. And lo and behold, in the first hour, 44% of the women are already shopping. I guess that's not really that much of a surprise. Some are at restaurants or at QSRs. And when you look at media, sure, obviously we're a driving society, and radio does very well in delivering that hour before. But look at digital out-of-home at 16.4%, being able to reach women right before they make those shopping and spending decisions. The last example I have is one of our life maps, and we really love these. This is actually using our respondent-level data, so we have anonymized this individual, but his name is certainly not Brandon, but he is a 42-year-old male who's making $75,000 annually, $75,000 plus annually as defined by MRI. He's a senior manager, and he's, in this case, a business traveler. And we can see what happens when he wakes up in the morning. He immediately gets in his car and goes to the gym. He's there exercising at 7:30, and lo and behold, he's exposed to some television in the gym, and he's feeling pretty confident. We see this a lot. People start out their day really happy. They wake up happy. They're confident, and the confidence wanes as they work their way through their working day. Sad to say, but his confidence is really pumped up, and when he's leaving the gym and he's driving home, he's content, and he's doing a little bit of relaxing, and then a little bit of cleaning and some personal grooming before he hits the car again and heads to the airport. And lo and behold, at the airport, he's probably in a lounge because he's doing relaxing, and not many other people at airports are doing any relaxing these days. And still feeling content, and he's excited about his business trip. He's doing some work and watching television at the airport. Again, it's a news program or a news genre. Halfway into this, he starts to experience a little frustration. So his flight was probably delayed, and he is annoyed, frustrated. Fortunately, he gets on his plane. He's doing work, and he is watching some television. First, he's watching a news program. And then there's Lucy, who's, well, I guess will be evergreen for us to indicate that it's a comedy program that he's watching in the plane. And he's interested because he's doing work and watching the programs. So really what Touchpoints delivers are results for our media clients, for our media service companies, on the agency side, and creative shops. I can't wait for Alan to get his hands on our Touchpoints data. So we're delivering increased relevance, improved media efficiencies, enhanced brand metrics, advertising ROI, and increased sales. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Henry. Next, we have Leslie Wood from Nielsen Catalina Solutions. Excuse me.
Hi. So I was invited by Paul Lindstrom to come and talk to you. It's not really going to be a Nielsen pitch. It's going to be more theoretical and thinking about the value proposition for place-based media and some thinking about measurement. So I know several times today you've heard the word recency. What I wanted to talk about is the whole idea of what's the proposition for place-based media. You've heard of reach and frequency, and recency is a component of it. So whenever you're doing a media plan, your first objective is to deliver reach. If a person hasn't been reached with a message, they can't respond. There's no advertising delivery. Advertising can't work. So often that delivery is a learning experience. It's a first time a message is delivered, and so that's a critical piece. And there are elements where digital place-based media can deliver that first message, but often that's done in TV or some major traditional media. But the secondary objective of a media plan is actually to remind and reinforce. And there's two different ways that happens with frequency, but there are two different kinds of frequency. So there's frequency that's recency, and then there's frequency that's pure frequency. And I want to really sort of delve into the concept of recency because I think that is where place-based media really, really shines. So the idea of recency was one of the key thoughts that brought on recency was that an exposure to advertising within close proximity to purchase exerts a powerful influence on sales. So that means that advertising delivered close to a purchase is extremely valuable. Now, some of you are going to go right to point of purchase and think that's what recency is. I want to deliver the message right as they're shopping. But actually, recency is broader than that. It goes back a day. It goes back 2 days. It's the idea that if you're changing the context of somebody's thinking, if you're reminding them back to the message that they learned, you're reminding them, you're close in, you're giving them frequency. It's the regular delivery of frequency across time. It's not delivery of frequency all in the same day, or as some of us have seen, a commercial delivered 5 times in the same program. That's pure frequency. And actually, it has very diminishing returns when you deliver frequency, bang, 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 bang. People actually get tired of commercial. It produces wear out. But that regular delivery of a message as you go across time, think of all the things people see your messages in their day-to-day lives. They regularly get that reminder that reinforces the larger media. So in my mind, this is a place where you're really bringing people the value of place-based media. I think that digital place-based ads deliver a regularly repeated message, which is recency, ensuring that an advertising message is delivered in close proximity to purchase. And that's a true value for your media. The other area I wanted to talk about is measurement. So before I joined Nielsen, I did some reach and frequency work with Seesaw. So I've actually thought deeply about what it takes to measure in this arena. you're at the early stages of measurement. There isn't a single definitive answer where we can say, actually, every single piece of digital place-based media, what is the audience? What's the reach? What's the ROI? Those measures are still evolving. What we really want is an integrated, comprehensive truth. We want estimates that guide us towards that. We want to use all available information. We want to use information from whatever source. All of these pieces of information, to have them included, whatever exists, into producing an estimate that is able to grow as more information becomes available, that is as sophisticated an estimate as anybody in the industry could provide, so that ultimately it's an agreed upon, standardized measure that both the buyer, the seller, and the planner can use to do consistent measurements. So I was hoping that David and I might disagree so we could argue, but I'm not sure that we did. Nielsen does have this mantra of being single, open, and integrated, and I couldn't resist because that's actually the goal, I think, for measurement in this arena. So I think that's it. Let's see. Yep, must be, because it's not moving forward. Thank you so much.
And last but certainly not least, Dr. Carl Marci from Interscope Research.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
And thank you to the DPAA for inviting me up here. I got excited when I heard the name of this conference, which is Context Matters. Because as a neuroscientist, one of the most important rules of the brain is that the brain is a context machine. I'll give you two simple examples. If I say the word roll, and I prime you with Thanksgiving dinner, you're going to think of a bread-like substance that often goes with meals. If I say the word roll and I prime you with children playing on a hill, you might associate it to kids tumbling in playful motion. Or another example, if I use the word tide and I prime you with a beach vacation, you're going to think of tides and oceans. And if I prime you with laundry detergent, you're going to think of a particular brand. The point is that the brain cannot understand the world without context. And today what I'm going to do is give you an example of how we used and measured the differences between two contexts for National Cinemedia as a case study for how clients are beginning to use our technology and our measurement tool, I think, to really go beyond what we sometimes refer to as traditional measures. So first of all, a little bit about Interscope. We were founded in 2006. We've done well over 1,000 projects on over 20,000 participants in 14 countries on 4 continents. We have an enormous database of biologically based signals, and that allows us to create benchmarks and normative comparisons so that we can see how something is doing relative to other things. And so we can create databases for the kinds of things that you all are trying to produce out in the world. We have lots of clients, you've heard of all of them, because they're trying to protect their brands. We have experience in CPG, automotive, electronics, healthcare, entertainment, financial services, retail, and high tech. And I say that because we do not claim to be experts in all or any of those particular industries. We are experts in the science of measuring unstated emotional response. And we depend on our clients to be experts in what they're doing. We are experts in study design. We are experts in research and answering the hard questions. So we will work with you to figure out a way to create a compelling story with research and technology about the power of the unconscious brain. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. So what do we actually do? Interscope believes that non-conscious, unstated emotional responses direct attention, enhance learning and memory, and ultimately drive the behaviors you care about. We use a biometric belt, which I'll show an image of in a moment, that measures 4 channels of biologically based information: medical grade heart rate, skin sweat, respiration, and motion. And I say medical grade is because the quality of those signals really matters. And we often combine that with eye tracking to get a holistic view of the brain. And so what we're really going after here is combining and measuring engagement. And by engagement, I mean attention to something that emotionally impacts you. And that's important to define engagement, because it's one of these words that gets used a lot. And the reason the definition matters is because if you can define it and measure it, then it has value. And so attention is only one component of engagement. It's that emotional response that actually tags information for relevance and ultimately drives how people respond. And so we like to think of this as a holistic approach. Eye tracking is evolving very quickly. We have glasses that give us point of view. We have glasses that actually have eye trackers embedded in it. People wear this biometric belt under their shirt, and they can walk in a retail environment, or they can experience media in any number of ways. Why do we measure the body's response and not directly measure the brain? Well, two reasons. One, it's very hard to bring an fMRI machine into a retail environment. Two, we don't actually experience emotions in our brains, right? We don't say, wow, my prefrontal cortex just went off, or ooh, my amygdala really fired that time, right? We talk about our skin crawling with fear, our hearts leaping with joy, something taking our breath away, or something moving us. And it turns out the brain in a jar is not very interesting. It requires the body to move and prepare it for action. So by measuring unstated emotional responses and combining them with the stated response, we get a more holistic view of what's going on. So I think neuroscience is very exciting. I think the application of neuroscience to marketing and media and out-of-home measurement is very exciting. I also think it needs to create models. So I'm going to walk you through very quickly a model that I think inspired Doug and his team at NCM to engage us, and then I'm going to very quickly show you how we did that. So engagement is one of these complicated words, but there's fundamentally, at least from our point of view, two types of engagement. One is immersive engagement. We put this on the vertical axis. The other is flexible engagement. Let me define those for you for a second. Immersive engagement is a kind of lean-back experience. The emotion centers of the brain are really driving that. And what's important there is that someone else is the producer and the director taking you on a journey, often linear, but increasingly, as Alan pointed out, nonlinear. Flexible engagement is different. You're usually in a mindset where you're goal-directed. You are the producer and the director of the experience you want. Now, some typical examples of this might be television versus the internet. But of course, this is a continuum. And as you can see, that continuum means things are going to change. Now, the challenge, of course, for you all trying to create immersive experiences in interactive environments is how do you get people to do that? The good news is, as the generations come up, and we have data to support this, they're switching much easier between immersive experiences and flexible experiences. And I am increasingly convinced that the wiring of the digital natives and so-called screen natives is fundamentally different, certainly than the way I'm wired, and most people in this room. And their ability to switch between these different types of engagement is exciting. Now, of course, the key here is that you can enhance the emotional component of any communication on any platform to get more engagement. Okay. So finally, what did National Cinemedia do, and what was their challenge? Their challenge with First Look was, how can we show that the experience of looking at advertising embedded in all kinds of different contexts prior to a movie experience in a cinema is more engaging than just seeing the same thing on TV? So what we did is we got two audiences, we measured their biometric response, and we produced a research result that NCM then took and created this video. So I'm going to show you the video rather than talk through the results. Please bear with me. This is the first time I was ever reading cue cards. But this very short 1-minute video, I think, really describes how a client, and I think a very forward-looking one, took our results and used them to tell a story with data. Go ahead and play the video.
My name is Dr. Marci, founder and CEO of Interscope Research, where we focus on understanding unconscious emotional responses to media and marketing messages. We recently conducted a breakthrough study with NCM Media Networks to quantify the magic of movies by measuring the emotional impact of advertising within First Look. For the study, we used a biometric belt that measures changes in 4 channels of biologically based information. Here's an example of what the emotional engagement for an audience looks like. The white line represents the moment-to-moment levels of emotional engagement of the audience watching the ad in the home TV environment. The blue line is the emotional engagement levels of the audience watching the ad within the First Look pre-show. The dotted line across the middle represents neutral engagement. Notice that the blue line stays well above the neutral line for most of the ad. whereas the white line had 4 steep dips below, which in most real-life settings would result in ad avoidance like channel changing or fast forwarding. At the final branding moment of the ad, the first look blue line sits at its apex. The highest point of emotional engagement hits when the brand is on screen. This is important because emotions tag information for relevance, and what could be more important than the brand featured in the ad? We found that the emotional experience of cinema going is powerful and involves more than just the sheer size of the screen. I see this as scientific evidence for the magic of movies.
So that's just one example. Oh, thank you. It only took 30 takes. I think that's just one example of what we did. Obviously, people sitting in a movie theater are sitting very still. We are now doing and bringing this technology into retail environments, into hopefully soon shopping malls, where people can walk very naturally and use passive engagement measures to define a sort of new set of metrics that I think fits very nicely into some of the ones you heard about already. So I'll stop there and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Carl. Thanks to all of you. All right, so if you have questions, be sure to write them down on cards, and I think we'll probably pass the cards to the center aisle, might be the easiest thing to do. And I think we have some microphones out as well. But while that's happening, I'll kind of get things started with a question here. Maybe we can get Leslie and David to argue a little. I don't know that we will. It's interesting because you both talked a bit about measurement. Leslie, you talked about the need to create evolving integrated measurement and the need to agree on standards, always challenging. And as we know, David, the current digital place-based service providers or audience providers have not yet been able to achieve MRC accreditation, although I think there's some progress in that direction. The question is, I guess it's a dual question. How do we get there? How do we get to the point where we actually have accredited measurement? What are your thoughts on how that might happen? And in the meantime, what is the industry supposed to do? How do agencies cope until that point where we have that accredited type of measurement?
I mean, I think the goal needs to be to continue to push for that. It's only going to help the industry. It's going to help the individual vendors in the space to get the accreditation. It's not an easy process, and I'll be honest, it should not be an easy process because I think the MRC is a great organization in setting those standards where they need to be, so that we as agencies and our marketing partners and clients can all feel good about it. I think a lot of it is you have to continue to make progress. You have to think about are we learning along the way? Is one of the sort of thoughts that comes to mind. Is we've made great progress, we've moved forward, but how are we thinking about what do we need to alter, shift, change to make it that much better, that much more consistent, and get everybody talking the same language. It's going to take time, but I think we can collectively get there. The other thing I will say is, yes, MRC accreditation, quality standards are incredibly important, and we can't take our eyes off of that. But there's perfection, and then there's good, and we need to take good and make good better and just continue to move along that pathway and not say, well, we don't know if we're going to get there, so we're not going to try to get there. Let's continue to make what is good better and figure out and have those right conversations and say, what are we missing? What is it that could make it that much better and that much more consistent and standardized? And I think as long as we continue to do that, I think we'll be in a, we will go from a good place to a better place.
Leslie, anything to add to that?
So digital, your environment is particularly complex. Each message is delivered in a completely different place, in a different way. It's all on a digital screen. But figuring out actually who's viewing that screen is going to be, it's not as easy as many other media are to measure. So I would agree with David, but I'd also say that it's going to be really evolving. You're going to want to include any information that you can find. You know, they're going to be different ways for measuring all the different pieces, and figuring out how to put them together and partnering with as many different ways to measure so that ultimately you do have that unified vision. I'm suspecting that MRC accreditation is probably a little further down the road. It's not tomorrow because of the complexities. So yeah, a great goal. Definitely, you want that goal. I think, again, perfection shouldn't undo good measurement. And I think what we have to understand is that you want as good a measurement as you can get, so that everybody can agree, is almost more important. That you all agree that it is as good as it could possibly be, and keep improving.
The other thing I'll add is, I think collectively, industry-wide, we often rely on similar solutions and similar companies and similar technologies. Stop. Let's look outside the usual places and partner with existing research experts and Nielsen and MBI and all these companies that have incredibly bright people there. But let's find who are the partners that we can go out there. How can we use technology to get to better measurement and supplement with technology and survey and different methodologies together to get there? Because my sense is if we just sort of continue down the same road, we may not get to better. So let's think of some innovation. Let's think about how we can you know, incubate innovation to get to a better place and try some things, see what happens.
Actually, on that, it was interesting because David had his 3 buckets, and the bucket on the far right is ROI measurement. You know, what's the impact of advertising? And that really is my forte. And I do believe that, like so Nielsen Catalina links people in by name and address and collects everything they buy from frequent shoppers, so it's a consumer packaged goods world. And then every ad they see in many different contexts. And many of you have data with name and addresses that understand when people came, all that transactional data. And I would love to do an experiment to see what is the advertising effect of your media. And you know, there's a case where it probably won't be audience measurement, but it could very well be really powerful measurement in terms of advertising response.
So you're thinking of things like, you know who's been at the doctor's office and you know who's taking a flight out of an airport or something.
That's right.
So
you know, and many times you know who's paid for their gas, and you know health clubs, whether who members are and that they've come through. You know that there's an awful lot of information that you know actually who people are and when they were there.
So there may actually be some advantages to this medium.
Right, so this medium does have some advantages where, you know, elevators, I haven't figured that one out, but yeah.
We'll stand you in the corner of the elevator with your chart pad. Microphone question. It's really hard to see from here, so I'll trust.
Way back here, it's Roger. 2 questions for Carl. First is sample size and projectability in the study that you did, and the second one is what's your perspective of translating the biometric measurement into a questionnaire? So for example, Brain Juicer and Motista, I don't know if you've heard of those companies, they do that kind of thing. It's really predicated not so much on engagement, but emotional connection with the brand, and apparently that's been shown to be very powerful predictors of brand advocacy.
Sure, so the first one, sample size, I think we had 60 participants in the study that I just described. Often people sort of think about that and say, well, wait a second, why so few? My response is, you know, why do surveys have so many? Any research measurement has to be based on what's called a power analysis. And what a power analysis is in statistics is a calculation that allows you to quantify your ability to detect an effect. An effect is, you know, are people taller or shorter, or is one thing more engaging or less? And a lot of what drives that is the sensitivity of the measure. And so biometrics are incredibly sensitive measures. So we can get away with samples of 30 or 60 or 100 people and predict the responses sometimes of millions or multiple millions. And we've done that. And actually the ARF has done a review of our technology, and we passed that with flying colors. Number one. Number two, our unit of measure is not the participant. We are sampling at 1,000 samples per second. So we're generating literally, on average, between tens of millions to 500 million data points per study. And that gives us an awful lot of power to generalize. Now, it's critical that we get the right recruit. So we do live testing. We are always double checking to make sure that people are who they are, who they say they are, because obviously with the relatively small samples, we need to be very sure about that. Your second question in terms of the relationship between stated responses and unstated responses, biometric EEG, fMRI, or others, I think we're in early days of that. We have partnerships with a number of companies who we are doing side-by-side testing with. I will tell you, and it's sort of beyond probably the scope of most of the people in this room, so I won't go on too long about this. It's very early days. I think what's really exciting is the ability of stated and unstated measures to inform each other. And that's why, sort of circling back to some of the discussion here earlier, when you're dealing with a complex environment and when you're dealing with subtle effects, you need multiple measures. And so I think I would encourage all of you to think about using multiple tools as we sort of innovate in this area to really understand what's going on.
Great. Another question from the microphone. All right, here's one that was handed up to me, and any of you can jump in and answer this one. How valuable is the TAB's eyes-on metric, and will it lead to higher spending in place-based media? So, TAB, eyes-on, will it lead to higher ad spending?
I'll start on this one. I think it's incredibly valuable. I've from when I first saw it and knew of the initiative, I think it was absolutely, quite honestly, transformative from a measurement perspective for the industry. It brought the industry from not a whole lot of great data, not a lot of comparability, talking a completely different language that, quite frankly, most people that weren't in the outdoor space didn't have a clue about, which is a big problem, to something that is meaningful, is more accurate, is more consistent across things, is much more granular. So I think it is absolutely very, very valuable, very, very important. The second part of the question, will it move money into the channel? It's going to help. I mean, honestly, I think better measurement helps because it makes people feel more comfortable about what they're doing and what they're getting. It also starts to, again, get to consistency and comparability across channels so that we can look at the cost to reach X number of people here versus here. And I also know the TAB is doing a lot of work in terms of integrating these data together with other things. Is there a one-to-one relationship, better measurement? If you increase your measurement quality by 10%, you're going to see 10% more money? No, absolutely not. There is no evidence of that. But it moves you into the conversation. It gets you into the right place, which if you're not there, you're not going to get the investment. And I think that's what it is. And again, the same way when we think about measurement across any space, it changes the conversation and elevates it. And I will tell you, working with marketers, they want to have those audience measurement metric questions, and it is a need and a demand, not, wouldn't it be nice if we had some of that? You have to have it, and if you don't have it, you're not going to see the money.
So Don, this is exactly why I think we were the perfect panel to follow Alan Schulman, because I think research is the new creative. And guys like David and shops like MediaVest are really reaching out and looking at new ways to understand the consumer, as Alan said, to build stories.
Yep.
And it's got to be, in a lot of ways, it's a lot of testing, but it also has to be somewhat scalable. And it's the reason that USA Touchpoints was developed from the ethnographic research work that my parent company, Sequent Partners, and did with Ball State University, following people around literally throughout their day from the time they wake up until the time they go to sleep at night, following them with a movie camera and recording all of their activity. Well, you can't make a syndicated study out of that. It doesn't work. So that's really where Touchpoints came in.
I would also say that there's a comment about variability. So what used to be the out of home measure, outdoor measurement was 100 showing, or these huge numbers and huge boxcar things that had no variability and no understanding of they were just huge numbers that actually nobody believed. And I think that as measurement improves, they'll be much more valuable in a market mix model. They'll be much more measurable. They will turn in so that money will flow to better measurement because you've got variability, and market mix models require that. And that's the standard way that people decide how valuable each element in a media plan is.
Makes sense. There's a question, I understand, from a microphone here.
Yeah. Hello? Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up to the biometric bit. I know there's research right now done with mice that, you can do kind of like mobile activity of brain activity and all that. Are you guys looping in or planning to do any of that with humans with, what's going on biometrically and then what's going on in the brain?
Did you say mice?
Mice. Yes. Yeah, like medical medicine, that kind of thing.
Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
So there's a number of ways I can answer that. You have to keep in mind that in any given week, there are close to 30,000 peer-reviewed publications in the world literature on the basic science of human behavior, brains and bodies and health. It's an enormous literature. And our NIH gets a tremendous amount of credit for producing the bulk and large body of that literature. What the NIH struggles with and continues to struggle with is how to translate that into learnings. And so fundamentally, I think what Interscope is about is translating some very sophisticated science and tools into, in this case, a market to answer particular questions about media and other. So I'm more than happy to look at mouse data or genetic data or any other data that can help me do a better job for my clients in terms of translating that science. And yes, new technologies are coming. We're not quite at the level where we're putting, brain stimulators in people so that we can, as they walk by a properly placed digital sign, that it triggers and orients them to that sign. But it could happen in our lifetime. And obviously, it'll make some of the privacy stuff we're dealing with on the internet look like a walk in the park. But there's some exciting things on the forefront, so I think we should all just sort of stay tuned.
That's great. One last question that we received. Henry, this is for you. How does the fusion of touch points with MRI data add to the dimensions that the media planner can examine?
Well, first of all, it's not technically a fusion, it's an ascription process, because we're really, the respondents for USA Touchpoints are actually the same people that maintained and filled out the diary for MRI. So we already know everything about them from MRI, what products they purchase, some of their psychographic information, some top-level media data in terms of the magazine readership, the transactional database for magazines. And then we add in the contextual environment, and that really helps our customers get a better understanding and help build stories that can appeal to the consumers. So we are fusing our database because ESPN, for instance, looks on us as a hub for all of their media properties. How are they going to evaluate their television properties, their radio properties, the print property, the magazine they have? And other companies are also looking at us as a hub, if you will. And one thing we're doing right now, shortly to be completed, is fusing our database with Nielsen's fourth screen. So that's a fusion. With respect to MRI, it's actually the same people.
Great, thank you. All right, with that, we need to move on. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panelists. Please join me in thanking them.